Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making a pumpkin soup. It's a super easy recipe and it's actually both plant-based and gluten-free. So if you're interested, keep watching. So the first part of this soup is getting all of our vegetables cut and ready to go so that when we are ready to put it on the stove, everything's ready and we can get the soup cooking really quickly. So I have one large red onion. I'm just gonna cut the top off, cut it in half, and then we wanna take away the first layer. Now, because we cut the onion in half, we have two even planes to work with. We're just gonna wanna take our knife and make vertical cuts from the top of the onion down. This soup is gonna be pureed at the end, so don't worry about your knife cuts. Just get everything cut around the same size so that each part of the onion cooks at the same time. So our onions and our garlic are gonna cook first, and then we're gonna add the apples and the celery. So in this bowl over here, we have our red onion and we're gonna add the garlic to it. And then in this bowl, we're gonna have the apple and the celery. And then we have 3 cloves of garlic. What we're gonna do is just lay them on our cutting board, take our knife parallel to the board, lean on it, and that's gonna smash the clove. You just peel away the outer edge, throw that in your bowl. It's okay if the garlic gets completely smashed under the knife because we're just gonna chop it all up and throw it in with the onion. And then you just wanna run your knife through these. Once again, they don't have to be in perfect little small pieces, just pretty evenly chopped. And then we have 3 stalks of celery. I got this celery from my farmer's market over the weekend, so it's nice and fresh. I just gave it a quick rinse. I'm gonna chop these little ends off, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to slice these down the middle. And then we're just gonna run our knife through here and give it a nice rough chop. We just want the celery to be all the same size, but it doesn't have to be perfectly tiny or anything like that. I have 2 green apples. These add a bunch of sweetness to the soup, and green apples actually have a natural thickener in them, so it helps to really bind the soup together without creating like a slurry with cornstarch or like a roux originally at the beginning of the soup. So you just want to cut your apple in half, take out the core. I simply do that by angling my knife into the green apple like so. And then we're just gonna wanna cut these in thirds and give these a nice rough chop as well. This technique of getting everything cut before we take everything to the stove is actually called mise en place. It basically just means getting all your ducks in a row so that when it is time to cook, there's no pressure to keep an eye on the stove, continue chopping, keep an eye on the stove. You can just add all the things at the time that they need to be added and just work really smoothly. I'm just gonna finish chopping up this apple, and then we're gonna go ahead and go to the stove and get everything sauteing and cooking from there. So all of our veggies are prepped and ready to go. Our Dutch oven has been heating up at a medium to high heat. I'm gonna add about 1 to 3 tablespoons of avocado oil into my pan. And then we want to add the red onions and the garlic first. Perfect, that's the exact sound that we want to hear. We want to sweat the red onions and the garlic first. Make sure they get nice color on them. And then we're going to add the green onion and the celery. With soup, it's really important to salt every layer. So we're gonna go ahead and put our half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of black pepper in right now. This is gonna help sweat out the onions, and it's also gonna toast that black pepper just a little bit. I also have a tablespoon and a half of cumin that's going in as well. Once again, this is just gonna toast it, and it's gonna bring out the flavor of the cumin. You're gonna wanna sweat these out for 3 to 5 minutes, and then we're gonna add our green onion and our celery. Green apple and celery. Onions and the garlic look good. They're smelling amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and add our green onion and our celery. Perfect. Maybe turn up the heat just a little bit. Make sure these are all evenly coated with the oil that's in the pan. We're just gonna let these apples and the celery, onion and garlic sweat out for just about 2 more minutes, and then we're gonna add our vegetable stock and our pumpkin puree. So our apples, our celery, our onion, and our garlic have all cooked for about 5 to 8 minutes, and in this cup I have 3 cups of low sodium vegetable stock, and then 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree that I've just stirred together, and I'm just gonna pour this into the pan. As we pour this in, we're gonna wanna make sure that we're stirring with our spoon to basically deglaze the pan. We're gonna wanna make sure that this mixture comes up to a boil, and then we're gonna bring it back down to a simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes, just until every vegetable is nice and tender. The apples are super soft, the celery no longer has a crunch, and the onions are super tender as well. So once this comes up to a boil, you're gonna then bring it down to a simmer, pop the lid on it, and just let it hang out for about 15 to 20 minutes. To a boil, it's nice and bubbly. What we're gonna wanna do is reduce the heat on our stove right down to low, and then we're gonna cap the soup. We're gonna set a timer for about 15 minutes, check on it, see how tender the apples are. If it needs to go longer, we'll keep it at that simmer for about 5 to 10 more minutes after that. While the soup is simmering, we're gonna go ahead and get those corn tortillas cut up, seasoned, and into the oven. While the soup is simmering, we're gonna wanna go ahead and get our corn tortillas into the oven. So right here, I just have 2 corn tortillas. This soup serves about 4, so I just figured a half a corn tortilla for each person. So we're gonna cut these right down the middle, stack them right on top of each other, give them another cut down the middle, and then we're just gonna cut little strips all throughout here. The corn tortillas, when they're baked in the oven, get super crispy, and they're a perfect textural component to the soup because the soup is super creamy. There's also some black beans in there that give it some heartiness, and then the crispy corn tortillas on top are perfect. Okay, so we have all the strips, and I like to just do this all on my cutting board. I have a tablespoon of avocado oil that I'm just gonna pour all over these. And then I have a half a teaspoon of cumin, salt, and pepper. If you like them a little bit more spicy, you can go ahead and add some cayenne or some paprika or some red pepper flakes, whatever you would like. I just like this mixture the best. So you're gonna wanna go ahead and give these a toss. Make sure that each strip is evenly coated with the cumin, the oil, the salt, and the pepper. And then I have my foil-lined baking sheet right here. And I'm just gonna go ahead and get the corn tortillas evenly spread out on this. And then we're gonna go ahead and pop them in the oven for about 10 minutes. It's a 450 degree oven, so you're gonna wanna keep your eye on it because these can burn super quickly. Okay, so our soup has simmered for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I turned the heat off about 2 minutes ago to help it come down in temperature just a little bit. I have a handy dandy immersion blender. Just got this bad boy from Amazon. Super excited to use it. If you do not have an immersion blender and you just have a normal blender or like a Vitamix or a Ninja, something like that, you're gonna wanna make sure to cool this mixture down completely because if you put hot liquids into a blender, turn it on, there's a chance that it can explode and it's just not ideal. So make sure you cool your mixture down and then add it to your blender. You want to make sure that you're keeping the entire immersion blender submerged and then kind of just cover those. Yeah. Be careful. The liquid is hot, so just be careful. If you're super nervous, you can cool down the mixture completely, but
are you super nervous?
I'm not nervous in the kitchen. All right, I'm gonna finish this until it is completely smooth. So we'll meet back in about 2 minutes when this is nice and smooth. So we have our blended soup here, and then we have all of the additions that we're going to add on right before we serve. Right before you serve the soup, make sure to squeeze a full lime into it. This is exactly when I like to add the lime juice because it's just a nice squeeze of freshness into that soup. All right, so the lime juice is in. I'm just gonna give this a nice stir right here. And this soup serves about 4 people. I know I mentioned that before, but I have my bowl right here. I'm just gonna add a few ladles full. It is so creamy, and what's great about this soup is you can make it any time of the year because you don't have to spend the time cutting up a pumpkin, roasting the pumpkin, then pureeing it. With that 15 ounce of pumpkin puree, it allows you to make it any time of the year, and it's super easy. So we got our soup in here, so creamy and delicious. I like to add black beans because they just add a nice, another level of creaminess. If you want to add rice or if you want to add quinoa, you can absolutely do that. I like to add the black beans. It's also a nice little contrast of color as well. And then I have just a little bit of cilantro here. The cilantro works really well with the cumin that's in the soup, and it's also my favorite herb, so I like to add that. If you don't have cilantro, you can add parsley, or maybe even a little bit of fresh sage would be great on the top. And then we have our crispy tortillas. They're so fabulous. They fit right on top of the soup, and once again, they're a great textural contrast to the soup. Once again, this soup is plant-based and gluten-free, but if you wanted to add a little bit of sour cream on the top, totally fine too. All right, let's taste this. So creamy, so delicious. The cumin is nice and warm in the back of your throat. The green apple keeps it nice and sweet. Textural contrast between the black beans, the crunchy corn tortillas, and the smooth soup. Once again, one of my favorite weeknight meals, my favorite soup to make because it's so easy and you whip it up within like 30 minutes. If you try it out, please be sure to let me know. And once again, all of my recipes are listed in the bio of the video. Thanks for watching.